A starlet confidently poses on a red carpet, flashbulbs pop around her as she waves to a cheering crowd. But onlookers sneer and whisper behind her back. Later, in a lavish walk-in closet, she touches her stomach with a smile, seeing an image of a baby in her mind. She dances joyfully in a gold dress, holding up her phone to take a selfie, ready to post the news. Suddenly, she freezes, her smile vanishing, her phone drops into her dress. As she looks around in confusion, a rapid montage flashes through her mind. A news article about her pregnancy, an older matriarch glaring in disapproval. The starlet is violently thrown out of a house. She screams as two men drag her away. She lies bleeding on the ground. Back in the present, she stumbles backward in shock, her hand pressed to her stomach, her face a mask of terror. She frantically looks around the empty room, then down at her belly. A man's hand is seen entering a code on the door outside. The starlet panics, tearing off her fur wrap, rushing to change her clothes as the door unlocks and begins to open. The starlet, now in a simple red robe, the CEO enters, pulling her into a passionate embrace. He kisses her neck, but she suddenly stiffens, her seductive gaze turns to one of fear. She gently pushes him back, her hand on his chest. Her face crumples, tears streaming down her cheeks as she looks up at him. Her body trembling, she clutches his shirt, burying her face in his chest, sobbing uncontrollably. The CEO stands perfectly still, his expression unreadable as he holds her. He looks down at her weeping form, his face hardening into a thoughtful, serious mask. The CEO gently wipes a tear from the starlet's cheek, a small smile playing on his lips. He pulls her back into a hug, her face still streaked with tears, but now a flicker of cunning crosses her eyes, a subtle smirk forming on her lips. Later, the CEO is on the phone, his back to her. The starlet watches him with a cold stare, her expression darkening as she listens. He hangs up and turns to leave, his face now distant and aloof. The starlet watches him go. She paces the room angrily, pointing at the spot where he stood. Her rage builds, and she begins to punch the sofa cushions repeatedly. Finally, she collapses onto the couch, defeated, her hand resting on her stomach as she stares into space. A determined glint in her eye, the starlet emerges from her room, yawning. She stops dead in her tracks, seeing the rival woman in a pristine white dress calmly sipping from a teacup. The rival woman stands up, her face a picture of innocence and concern. She looks at the starlet's casual clothes and then at her own elegant attire, a subtle judgment in her eyes. She begins to cry, a look of disbelief turning into a wry smile. She rolls her eyes, then mimics the rival's tearful performance. Her expression shifts to one of feigned sorrow. She clutches her hands to her chest, sobbing dramatically. The rival woman's facade cracks, her eyes widening in confusion, and then narrowing in anger. The starlet suddenly stumbles backward as if struck, letting out a theatrical gasp. The rival woman raises her hand to slap her, but freezes as the CEO's face appears in a flash. He steps between them, shielding the starlet. The starlet immediately clings to him, her face buried in his chest, her eyes wide with fake innocence. The rival woman looks on, her expression a mixture of shock and betrayal. The CEO glares at her, his face cold and disappointed. He turns his back on her, comforting the starlet, who gives a triumphant wink over his shoulder. The rival woman stares after them, her face crumbling in defeat. Later, the starlet is choosing between two dresses, a revealing pink one and a modest white one. She initially reaches for the pink dress, then hesitates, her face contorting with frustration as she reluctantly chooses the white one. At a lavish party, the CEO is talking with guests. He looks up as the starlet descends a grand staircase. Bathed in a golden light, she is wearing the elegant white dress, looking serene and beautiful. The CEO stares at her, his eyes filled with awe and admiration. The guests at the party stare in disbelief as the starlet descends, murmuring amongst themselves. The CEO watches her approach, his expression unreadable but intrigued. He walks to meet her, a faint smile on his face. She looks at him with a shy, vulnerable expression. He gently touches her cheek, his eyes softening. She looks up at him, a hint of a smile on her lips. Later, she approaches the matriarch, who eyes her with suspicion. The starlet gently drapes a shawl over the old woman's shoulders. The matriarch's stern expression melts into a warm smile. The starlet smiles back. A photographer secretly snaps photos of the tender moment. The pictures go viral online, with comments praising the starlet's kindness. In her bedroom, the starlet scrolls through the positive comments on her phone, her face lighting up with a triumphant grin. She flops back onto her bed. The starlet sits at a formal dinner table with the CEO and his family, looking bored. As the CEO enters the room, she stands and approaches him, her expression turning shy and demure as she gently touches his sleeve. He looks down at her, his expression softening. She asks to join his family for dinner, and he agrees, his eyes filled with a new tenderness. At the table, the matriarch and another woman watch her with cold disapproval. The starlet nervously bows to them, then gracefully pours tea for the matriarch, who takes it with a grudging nod. The other women at the table serve the matriarch special dishes, making the starlet feel like an outsider. She begins to eat, but suddenly covers her mouth, looking ill. The CEO rushes to her side, his face filled with concern. The matriarch and the other women stare at her, their expressions a mix of shock and suspicion. The matriarch dismisses everyone, leaving the starlet alone with the CEO and the rival woman. The CEO praises the starlet's behavior, and she smiles shyly. The rival woman glares at them. Later, the starlet is in her room. She rushes to a trash can and vomits. Clutching her stomach in pain, she then posts a message online about her illness, but is met with a barrage of hateful comments. She reads them, her face contorting in anger and disbelief. Suddenly, she hears the CEO's voice outside her door. He is on the phone, his expression grim. He hangs up and looks at his phone, reading a message that makes his face darken with fury. He throws a stack of photos on the floor, revealing pictures of the starlet with another man. He bursts into the room and confronts her, his eyes blazing with rage. He grabs her chin, forcing her to look at him as he accuses her. The starlet frantically gathers the photos, insisting they are fake. The CEO stands over her, his face a mask of cold fury. The rival woman watches from the doorway with a smug smile. The starlet desperately tries to explain, pointing to details in the photos. She grabs a tablet and unlocks it, showing the CEO the original pictures, proving they were doctored. The CEO's anger turns to shock, then to rage as he glares at the rival woman, who flinches under his furious gaze. He stands stoically. The starlet, seeing her chance, collapses dramatically, knocking over a box of prenatal pills. The CEO's eyes widen in shock as he sees the pills, his face filled with concern and guilt. She tells him she's been taking them because the pregnancy is unstable. He pulls her into a tight embrace, apologizing profusely. She clings to him, a cunning smile playing on her lips as she glances at the defeated rival woman in the hallway. The rival woman stands alone in a hallway, making a phone call with a furious expression, and finally, to a triumphant smile. She reads the comments online, which have now turned in her favor. She receives a voice message from the matriarch, who offers her support and protection. The starlet is overjoyed, dancing around her room with a huge grin. She then gets a phone call from her agent, who tells her to do a live stream. The starlet's smile vanishes, replaced by a look of utter shock and disbelief. She refuses, clutching her pregnant belly, but he threatens her with a massive contract termination fee. Her face falls, her eyes wide with shock and disbelief. The rival woman bursts into the living room, her face a mask of distress. She rushes towards the CEO, who is sitting with the matriarch and another woman. The matriarch glares at her, her expression cold and disapproving. The CEO stands up, his face a mixture of concern and confusion. The rival woman tearfully explains that the starlet insulted her and is planning a scandalous livestream. The matriarch and the other woman look shocked and angry, but the CEO defends the starlet, his face hardening with conviction. The rival woman, seeing her plan failing, insists they go see for themselves. The matriarch agrees. The CEO and the rival woman exchange a tense glance as they follow the matriarch out of the room. The matriarch, the CEO, and the rival woman stand outside the starlet's bedroom door, listening to the sounds of a raucous livestream party. The matriarch's face contorts with rage, convinced the starlet is a disgrace. The CEO clenches his fists, his expression a mixture of anger and betrayal. The rival woman smiles triumphantly. The matriarch orders the door to be broken down, and two maids begin to ram it with their shoulders. They burst into the room and stop dead in their tracks, their faces a picture of utter shock. They burst into the room to find the starlet dressed in a traditional gown, calmly practicing calligraphy by candlelight. She looks up at them, her expression a picture of serene innocence. A phone on a tripod reveals she was live-streaming her calligraphy session, not a wild party. The rival woman stares in disbelief, her mouth agape. The matriarch's anger melts away, replaced by a look of confusion and then grudging respect. The CEO's face softens, a hint of a smile playing on his lips as he looks at the starlet with newfound admiration. The matriarch watches them all, her expression unreadable. The girl in blue continues her explanation, a slight smile appearing on her face as she speaks. Suddenly, a memory flashes. The girl, now in a white sweater, clutches her stomach in distress. A vision of a baby appears. She looks panicked, pleading desperately. She clasps her hands together, begging for another way. Her face crumples in tearful resignation. Back in the present, the girl in blue smiles to herself, a look of secret relief on her face. The others watch her, their expression shifting to confusion and suspicion. The girl in blue suddenly gasps, covering her mouth with her hand. The woman in green points an accusing finger at the girl in blue, who stands her ground, calmly challenging the accusation. The woman in green scoffs, turning to the woman in white for backup. The woman in white looks flustered, but seems to confirm the story. The matriarch watches them, her expression stern. The girl in blue speaks again, her gaze unwavering. The matriarch suddenly slams her cane on the floor, silencing everyone. She turns her sharp gaze on the woman in green, and the woman in white, her face etched with disappointment. The woman in white looks down in shame, while the woman in green looks utterly stunned by the scolding. The matriarch continues her tirade. The matriarch dismisses them with a wave of her hand. The woman in white tries to protest, but the woman in green pulls her away. They turn and leave in disgrace. The girl in blue watches them go, a triumphant smile spreading across her face. The matriarch walks to the desk, picks up a sheet of the girl's calligraphy, and examines it with a thoughtful expression. The girl watches the matriarch nervously, her hands clasped in front of her. The matriarch silently studies the calligraphy, her face unreadable. The girl starts to panic, her internal voice racing with anxiety, about to apologize when the matriarch finally speaks. The girl looks up in stunned silence, a flash of light underscoring her complete shock. The young man looks at his grandmother in disbelief, but she just smiles warmly. She begins to gently critique the girl's handwriting, pointing out its flaws. Yet her tone is encouraging. The girl listens. He teases her, but she just looks at him with a serene smile. The girl shoots him a warning look. The matriarch then turns her attention back to the girl, asking about her pregnancy. The girl answers, her voice filled with hope. The matriarch makes a plan for the next checkup, including the young man's mother. The girl is overjoyed, her internal voice celebrating the victory.